1955, I was just graduating from, um, actually, I was just graduating from high school. And immediately after that, I had decided that I did not want to live in Newark, New Jersey, where I was born, that I had tried to and had actually registered for, a college program, but I did not get that at that time. So my decision was that I would delay college and I would go to the Air Force. So I went to the Air Force from 1955 uh, to 1954 to 1957. So I was not in the United States at that time. I was scheduled and stationed in Germany for most of the time. And being in the military during that short period was um, not a time when I was involved in and being in Germany also, that I was involved in the civil rights movement. That movement for me didn't begin until um, I returned in the 60s. I was home in the 60s and had already um, started my college education. And I was thinking about this the other night. I was kind of like on the struggling end of trying to just become whoever Mary Barnett was going to become at that time. So I was much involved in existing because I had to work 3 jobs just to make sure that my tuition was paid. I did not live at home in New Jersey. I moved to International House here in New York City, and on a partial scholarship in that facility, but I was fully paying for my tuition at college. So although I was aware of um, things that were just beginning to happen in New York, as far as, involvement and, listening to, going to protests, listening to speeches. I was very involved in a lot of listening to the radio at that time, and hearing the speeches of, Malcolm X, and, going to bookstores to gather information. The Liberation Bookstore is a very popular, well-known bookstore that was in Harlem at that time, near 135th Street. And people used to gather there and have discussions and buy books pertaining to African Americans and this resistance, and also a lot about your past history and slavery, etc. So it was like the Liberation Bookstore was like a hub where you could go to meet people, hear lectures, buy books, and just be surrounded by people who were determined that change was going to have to happen for, for them and for everyone else. So that's basically my existence during that time from 55 and I mean 54 until 58, because it wasn't until 57 that I was released from the Air Force. The experience within the Air Force, I never had any I never had any, I, don't, I shouldn't say any. I only had one problem with as far as being aware of racism. I should say two, because the first one was that when I was in basic training, I was stationed in San Antonio, Texas. Now, coming straight from Newark, New Jersey to San Antonio, Texas, having never been anywhere else in my life, my first airplane ride and all of that, and then being placed in a very kind of a situation where I was not exposed to the um, the general population, and I had no idea, not from anything that I had learned in high school or anything I had read after, or any, relations or friends or anything. I didn't have any outside friends. I went from one kind of protected environment to another intact protected environment, where everyone in the Air Force was treated, um, basically equally. However, my first experience, excuse me, was the roommate that I was assigned. And the roommate that I was assigned at that time was, I just figured she was just another white girl. I had gone to school with white people in Newark, New Jersey. I had no idea that um, there was any kind of problem. Um, Schools in those days, we really didn't deal. There wasn't anything you know, in the literature that we were exposed to that prepared me for anything like I was about to experience. So lo and behold, the first night we were together in a room. It was just the two of us, and each room had two occupants, and my bunk was on one side of the bed and her bunk was on the other side of the bed. Well, she never spoke. And so I didn't speak. I went about my business and went to bed. But in the middle of the night, all I could hear was crying. And I said, wow, she must be very lonely, unhappy, whatever. And kind of, went to sleep and dismissed it. The next morning, was sitting on the bed, with uh, her hands in her lap and rocking from side to side, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, I have to go on with whatever I have to do. So I went to wherever I had. Well, lo and behold, this went on for about 3 nights. And then the fourth day, she was no longer there. And of course, I was curious, and I was told that, first of all, she had never been exposed to Black people before. She didn't realize she had come from the hills of, I don't know where, somewhere in Tennessee, and had never been exposed, so she said, to Black people. And she was totally afraid and could not stay, in the Air Force. So um, in fact, it was the chaplain that told me this. I was called to the chaplain because that's how sensitive it was. So they said that they discharged her. So that was my first experience with that kind of racism in at all, really, because I hadn't experienced that in Newark, New Jersey. Um, then the next event was at the end of our 6-week training. We were allowed to go to the town as a group, as a squad. There were 27 of us. And actually, I never noticed that I was the only person of color in that particular grouping, because during the days I saw other people, marching along, doing work or whatever. Um, so at this point, the squad leader came to me as we were about to board our little bus to go into San Antonio proper, where we was to go to the Alamo and go to the zoo and the botanical gardens and all that. And everyone was very excited about it. And I was just told that she sat me down and said, please don't be upset, but certainly you can go on the trip. She said, but once we get there, you will have to, you cannot be with the group. You'll have to go along by yourself. I said, in a zoo? Why? Why can't I be with them? She said, because there are certain laws here in Texas where whites and blacks cannot mingle. Neither can Mexicans and whites mingle. I said, but it's a zoo. I said, all we're going to be doing is looking at animals or flowers, etc. She said, that is the law, and that is what we're going to have to. So that's what happened. I cried through the whole zoo. and and we were there quite a few hours, and I saw my squad mates going by in twos and threes, etc. And we just would acknowledge each other by looking at each other like that, and that was it. But my protests were private protests. I never, and nor do I at this time participate in protests, large groups of people outside, marching and things like that. I have never done that. That's why I thought, well, I don't know what is going to be that interesting to these young ladies, because I know, according to the email, that you're focused, but I never did that. And I can tell you why I didn't do it. Certainly I met with groups of people, and I've had, and still do have lengthy conversations about the political system and about, my experiences with, racism at this time, being denied, either a job because my hair is braided, and uh, being told that I can't go one place or the other because of some kind of limitation set upon it. But the radio, and I was speaking to a friend of mine recently who also had the same experience. Um, the radio was really the thing that educated most young Black people at that time. And listening to Malcolm X, one felt that you would want to go out and go into a march, but at the same time, you felt that, or I felt that, um, the benefit I'm the benefit of that would be what? That's actually what I thought. I thought that educating myself and learning how to navigate life within what Malcolm X was saying at that time, because he went through a couple of stages, whereas, his introduction was, uh, in his speaking was, I felt very educational. I didn't feel the fury that other people felt, because having not had any education, uh, um, not having politics as a part of, racism, and just the struggle of Black people, I hadn't had that background. So therefore, I mean, as far as reading and learning and participating in it. So therefore, what he was saying was really taking me to a level that was very, very um, exhilarating, really. Yeah, it was really exhilarating because he was so smart, and he was so um, dedicated to to being able to educate people so that they would be able to stand upright, you know, and know and demand, respect and dignity, and know and be ready to, um, just not take all the things that they had been taking, never to bow their heads, never to bow your head, to look people straight in the eye, and to be able, for the thing that impressed me so is to ask questions and deny answers. You know what I mean? That's very important. The thing about having choice and being able to be in command of your own um, decision making, and being in command of what your needs are, and how to go about being a part of a community, not just, you know, uh, you know, I mean, a community that was able to move mountains, and there were lots of speakers on 125th Street. I mean, you could go to about every corner and there would be someone, but when he appeared, it was centralized, and people went to hear him speak. So he was, I mean, of course, I didn't know him personally, but I must say that I was educated through his speeches about my ancestry, about the pride of that ancestry, and about the contributions of that ancestry, and also about the contributions of people that were now presenting themselves as leaders in the African American community. I was a student at that time, so I was really dependent upon um, other adults for my existence. Not financially, as I said. I certainly I had 3 jobs, and I worked and I worked and I worked, and I got through it, and thank God. But I felt a change in myself because I began to seek out books, uh, and try. I found myself being drawn to a different um, I don't know, group of people, people that were, um, you know, who were also going to college, and people who were determining what their career tracks were going to be, etc. And mine was already determined because I was in an art school. I went to the Juilliard School of Music,
Ooh.
and so, but just having a whole shift of ideas, being able to share different ideas about what are we going to do moving forward, and how do we do that. And I didn't think so much about it. I'm going to make this contribution. No, I didn't think about that. What I thought about was just how do I want to move forward with the understanding and the desires that, those what I had experienced, um, uh, would how would I move forward with all that. Uh, and I said, well, you really have to I spent a great deal of time with myself. Um, I began to do things like meditation. I wanted to know about myself, you know, and I wanted to be involved and see, to find kindred spirits, really, uh, who were also willing and open to share their experiences, and be able to just, move forward. Physically, I did change. And I did run into some, I don't know, confusion. I guess it was misunderstanding on their part. It certainly was a total intention on my part. But I, at my junior and senior year, I got an apartment, a little apartment by myself, and there I was able to, as I say, to do my meditation, to be involved with a lot of reading, etc., and attend a lot of more concerts and things like that. But um, learning about, Black writers, authors, etc., that was like the beginning of that. And so this physical change came because one day I decided, I had been looking through a lot of books on Africa and this and that and the other thing. And um, I decided, you know what, it's time. So I just decided that no more straightening combs, no more, no more curlers, no more any of that, and threw everything away and got my scissors and cut off my hair. And that was the beginning of, I don't know, 50, 60 years of, uh, natural hair. But when I went to school the next day with this, because of, the civil rights movements and the outside, the protests and things like that, everybody, not everybody, but most of my non, we were colored at that time, non-colored friends, uh, just treated me completely differently, you know. And even in my own home, when I went back to New Jersey, Um, I remember I rang the bell. My aunt came to the door. I was raised by my aunt and my uncle and my grandmother. And I went home on this weekend. And when she opened the door, and she said, "Now, what are you doing?" Oh, and she rolled her eyes and she was very disgusted because for, the first, 15 years of my life, she was the one that straightened my hair, curled my hair and fixed my hair and braided my hair. And so she felt that it was a total, that I was becoming some kind of pickaninny or something. She changed. She changed, and it wasn't even 4 years later because she was the one person in the family that did actually go on a protest. She went to the March on Washington, and so I had to sit down with her to, find out what all of that had been about. But that just the very fact that people were looking at me differently, and I was I was the only one in my school who had who had natural hair like that, cut like that. It was just almost off. And in my group of friends, I was the only one. You know, I worked at a dance studio after school. That was one of my jobs. And no one there had it. No one. But this particular dance school, the new dance group studio in New York, was, I found out later, the very home of where activists gathered, where they were allowed, where artists, activists were allowed to express themselves in every way and any way that they pleased. And these were some of the places where Alvin Ailey taught classes, and people, Donald McHale taught classes, and, you know, um, uh, if you go to, a modern dance, book, uh, you will find almost every name there had come through the new dance group studio. And I was a student there and a scholarship person before I went to Juilliard, and then after work there. So there was always a lot of hubbub there. And I just became a person that whereas I was a little shy before, and wouldn't speak up or talk, that, in groups of people, I found myself um, still listening a great deal, but able to have an opinion and able to voice that and articulate that opinion, with others. So that gave me a true sense of being. I have a voice. I have something to say, and I can share it. You don't have to agree with it all the time, but I can share it and find out what other people have to say and what their opinions are and why. Why has always been a big, big uh, question for me. It's something that motivates me all the time because I constantly ask why. Well, why are they doing this interview? What is the focus of, whatever. I want to know where, um, how to respond. Okay, it's about the response. It's not just um, the response. It's the response and my reaction. I don't want to just respond, but I want to be able to react, because react is a part of action. And I want to be able to know that I'm able to do that. probably now at this very moment, yes, there are many people reviewing, not just viewing, but reviewing that time through photographs, et cetera, or and discovering, like I did, you know, back then, discovering for the first time that there was so much involvement and so many people, Black people at the forefront, that were doing incredible and almost impossible things, confronting these things that were, for most of us, were norms. You know what I mean? Because we weren't dealing with it day to day, but there were our people who were dealing with it, you know, like John Lewis and Elijah Cummings, and these were young people at the time too, you know, um, and they were involved in being um, and deciding what they wanted to see in the future, you know, and they were not afraid, like he always said, about, it was about, he almost gave his life, and he would have given his life for his freedom. Well, this is what I think a lot of young people now, and hopefully, I don't know, but hopefully a lot of young Black people, if I say from my experience, the young people that I'm in contact with as a mentor in the high schools, these young people, the pride that I discovered that was living within me when I was a young person, they have no sense of that whatsoever. You know, they have no sense of pride. They have no sense, I'm being general, okay? And I don't mean to include every young person in the world, but I'm speaking about my experiences in the high schools at this point. Where do you begin with them when they don't have anything to reach back to, that anything presented to them about their past that they can call upon? Most of those children at this time, their parents did not have anything to reach back to. And you say, well, I wonder why, because we went through the civil rights movement, we did that and everything. But what was the determination of young people who later became parents? What was their determination about what they had gained, or what the race had gained at that point, as far as voting rights and this, and entree into colleges, and into a society. Let's just say that, into a society, the let me quote that, the acceptable society. Okay, what did they? Well, it seems to me that people must have been, because I don't know, must have been so involved in moving forward to make sure that their children, so they skipped over themselves, a lot of them skipped over themselves, but their children would not have to experience anything like they had to experience as they were growing up. Okay, so what they did is they gifted them with a certain freedom and misunderstanding of how to use that freedom and that understanding and what to tie that freedom to and that background to. So, I mean, you would know better than I what young people your age are know and don't know or want to know about just what's happening right now, because we are going through another 60s. We are going through it. There are things that have not been changed in generation after generation and generation that are resurging for attention right now. Okay, so what do you do? You know, what are they interested in doing? Just marching in the protest is not enough. You have to know why you are there, and you have to know how to make that protest become a movement, being actual action. We want action, not just response. That the protest is a response to what happened. Okay? Movement is the action. We want action. What actions do we want to take, and how can we go about getting them, making them a reality for us all, you know? So I'm not sure. I I sit here every day because I've basically been in the house since March the 16th. I just started going out once a week for groceries and do all my errands in May. That's once a week, and so that's 4 times in May, and then June, and here we are. But the majority of the time is just listening to the news, dealing with the news, responding or reacting to the news as with friends who I speak to daily, and you know, wondering like everybody else what happens on the other side of this, and wondering to myself, a quote from a book that I love: how am I meant to be shining? What is that? Where am I meant to be shining? Is it as a writer, a reader, a messenger? What is it? To be determined. Yeah. First of all, I didn't live with my parents. Everything about me is just a little bit different. I was brought up by my grandmother, and in a household with my uncle, who became very much like my father. So my grandmother, my uncle, and my aunts, um, and eventually cousins, etc. We lived in a project in Newark, New Jersey, that was the first multi-level project building in I think the United States, but I know for sure in the state of New Jersey. And it was kind of an experiment, this project, because, which was a norm for us, the project was divided in 2 parts by a street uh, called James Street on one side, and on the other side, a street called Orange Street. Well, this is where you get a lot of, I don't know, I think about it often, but the James Street side was on one side, all the project buildings were occupied by colored people, Negroes. And on the opposite side of James Street, all the projects were occupied by white people. So they called this a mixing. And I didn't realize this until I was an adult, until I was in the service and realized what happened to me, that this was not a norm. And we as children were told never to cross that street and to go over there to play. Mm. That was it, nothing else, not because of this, because of that, just don't do it. So no one ever did it. Yeah. On the other side, on the Orange Street side, there was a bridge. The bridge that went from Orange Street to another community. That community over there was occupied by Blacks, Italians, and Irish people. I'm telling you all this this is retrospect. This is not anything that I realized as a child. But we were told, although some of us went to junior high school from the project to across that bridge, that we were never to be found on the other side of that bridge after dark. No other explanation, just don't do it. And that we didn't do. Now, away from home, in the service, blah, 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 all of this materializes in my head after this experience with the little girl crying. When I did go back home, I spoke to, my aunt and my uncle about that. So I realized, the white side, the colored side, don't go over there. Some of those kids that lived over there were schoolmates or classmates of mine. So we never intermingled. So that was something good. Nor did we, this is funny, but that very hill, that very street had a steep, steep hill. And in those days, we used to sleigh ride. And a big snow would come and all the sleds would come out, etc. All the sleds from the Black side. The white people never came out to go sledding down that hill. That I didn't realize because we would be going down the hill on the sleds and fathers would be pulling the children down the hill on cardboard boxes and little ones would be rolling down the hill or running down it. And it was just so festive and wonderful. But I didn't recognize that at that time, we were the only ones out there. I guess at that point, the white kids must have been told, you don't go out there. Mm-hmm. So it's very strange that those things we were told, and funny things we were told, like, especially the girls, we had a swimming pool not far from where we lived. And we would always, during the summer, we'd beg, can we go to the swimming pool? And my aunt would always, no, can't go today. And someone's like, oh, but so-and-so's got, no, you can't go today. And then finally, it was revealed to her, my aunt was not going to be washing hair and straightening hair after going. You can't get your hair wet, okay? You can't get your hair wet because the hair is going to draw up and going to be nappy, and I can't be doing that. And too many children in the house, whatever, you can't do it. So as I speak to my friends now about that, they said, oh yeah, I could. That's why we don't know how to swim now, because they wouldn't let us go to the swimming pool. We couldn't go to swim. So that was another thing as far as what we were told to do and not to do. Certain stores we couldn't go in. We should never go into stores by ourselves. And for a long time, I now notice that it wasn't until I was about, I don't know, maybe 8 or something, that my aunt started taking my cousins and I downtown with her. And we'd go to, we would go to some stores, but some stores we did not go into. Didn't dawn on me. But what did occur to me was that my aunt, she loved eating hot dogs. And the 5 and 10 was like, the everything store at that point. And it had a lunch counter, and, you could, the certain part of the lunch counter we could not go to. Mm-hmm. Okay. As a child, that's all right. Your parents just lead you to somewhere else, and that's where you go. But I now notice that that's where we always went, and we're not allowed to be in the 5 and 10 by ourselves. We had to be with an adult. Except in my family, that was certainly true. We couldn't go downtown by ourselves, and we could not go into, especially the 5 and 10, because they had all little toys and things, that kids may pick up or whatever, meaningfully or not. But so I noticed that. And I also noticed that my aunt would always, I now notice, she would always want to buy a hot dog in the 5 and 10. And with the relish and the this and the that, and we'd all be standing there, and she'd buy one for herself and break one, a half for my cousin, a half for me. And, but we'd always be standing. I now remember we always would be standing there, So there were things that I didn't notice as a child as being out of the norm, but I now notice as being those taboos, things that we just could not do. We never brought kids home from school, especially no white child would ever come anyway, but we didn't bring kids home from school. All of our playing was always outside. We were outside children. We played in our yard, and this project was very well equipped. It was beautiful. It had, cherry blossom trees and bushes and benches where grown-ups could sit at night and things like that. But we were held very close to our parents, no matter what. If we were outside at night playing, parents were always with us. So it was guarded. Like I said before, I went from a guarded situation into another guarded situation, when I left home. We were all told the same thing. Where to go, how to, no matter, and no matter what age. Yeah. I speak to my peers that did not even grow up in New Jersey or in the North or North and South, and they tell me the same thing.
Wow.
They tell me the same thing. You don't do this, you better not do that, you can't go swimming, do this, don't stay out, da, 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 da. And I had curfews. When I was a teenager, I had a curfew. I had to be in the house or sitting outside of the house, at 16 and 17 years old by 9:30, 10 o'clock. That's the summertime. In the wintertime, you were in the house. So you just forget it. That was it. But the summertime, you know. So it was a different time, certainly, but it's a time that, as I look back and I speak with my friends about their younger periods of um, time that I really cherish because we were so close then. We're multi-generation. What is happening to Hispanic families, now in the United States where multi-generations live in one home. That's the way I lived all my life until I left home, you know, grandmother, aunts, uncles, cousins, and there was ample room and everything was fine. We didn't miss it. We didn't miss a beat. We had Christmas, we had Thanksgiving, we had Easter, we had black patent leather shoes and little bonnets. We had it all, So you didn't know that. I just never realized that wasn't the way it was supposed to be.
Wow.
You know, and no one said, you poor, because we were not poor, not in spirit, not in every grown up in that house had a job, worked, and that money went in the pot, and that money was for everybody.
Wow.
So that's the kind of thing that shapes you forever, you know. And some of that I long for, especially the closeness, the family closeness, and the recognition and the coming together, for all of those holidays, etc., and the stories being shared, by the older people telling us young people spooky stories, and we're screaming. We didn't have television. That was our only entertainment. They would tell us stories about their childhood, and we'd run around and scream and laugh and have such great fun, and then cousins would come over, and, more cousins and aunties, and, and it was quite wonderful. And the friends that I speak to, they say the same thing.
Wow.
That's what they miss. As I told you, how can I say this? I think as a movement, as an organized movement, as you are looking at it, I never thought of civil rights as that. Civil rights is just what, for me, is just what it is. Equality, what it says. Are you civil? Are you respectful? Are you trustworthy? Are you I don't know, not only creative, but do you contribute? All of that, for me, being able to do all of that is my civil right. That's civil right. Is there equality? Can I get a job? Am I able to express who I am and what my talents are as everyone else, whether they're black, white, or green? Okay. For me, that's civil rights. If we all come together to make sure that we know who we are, why we are, and what we are, then that, for me, that's civil rights. That's why I think I don't readily, besides being claustrophobic, but yes, I am. I'm claustrophobic, and I'm a little fearful. I'm a little fearful of crowds, having been caught in one
Mm.
on 125th Street one time when, you know, there was supposed to be a festival and a sound went off that sounded like a gun,
Mm.
and everybody started running.
Yeah.
And I was separated from my godchild who I had been with and her father. I was separated from them. And I remember just being standing stark still, watching people just leave people that they were with and just running no matter where. They didn't know whether they were running into a danger or away from danger. And I just stood stark still. I
Wow.
just didn't know what to do. And I promised myself that although I had never been to a protest, that I would never go to one,
Mm.
because to see people almost be trampled, etc., I'd rather go to a huge hall, a conference, or whatever, and be able for people to be able to express themselves, to speak, to gather some, kind of, I don't know, decision making, and be able to be in groups and be able to take those groups beyond that place to actually do something,
Right.
to actually go to the police station, to
Mm-hmm.
actually go to City Hall, in a group and you are able to speak to people and da 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 da, make demands, etc. But I really respect the people who are out on the streets today, especially the young people.
Mm-hmm.
I pray for them. Uh, and I pray that they find a direction to be able to actually actualize, not just speak about, but actualize the things that they want. And they're able to prioritize their wants and wishes and go step by step methodically and with consistency and consciousness, and for as long as it takes. Now I'll join a for as long as it takes group if it means working every day towards an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
That's, for me, is what I would do, you know but I don't even ride my stationary bike in the house because I look around and say, well, where am I going? So I want to be able to go somewhere and do something. So I try to make that happen by turning on the television, but it doesn't. I still, you know. So, yeah, civil rights. Let's all be civil,
Mm-hmm.
and let's all acknowledge that we are, first of all, human beings. And there is no difference when it comes to that. You may be impaired, you may be beautiful, you may be whatever, but you are, we all are human beings with our differences and our similarities, mostly similarities. So that brings up another part of my life, because I think that the recognition that you're speaking of, that that I realized that was being attributed to me for as some kind of maybe in quote leader in my family. First of all, that recognition that I was an independent thinker, and had actually desires and wishes, and for my future and for how I wanted to develop, came when I went to the service, because that was my first big decision, you know, that I'm going to do this. I didn't speak to my family about it. I didn't forewarn them. I had graduated from high school. I had been in a situation where, you know, at that time, family member found me little babysitting jobs. I had graduated from high school. I thought I was something special by doing that, especially since I was the first one in my school. I mean, in my family to do that. I thought, well, okay, now I'm going to go out and going to get myself a little job and, you know, make my own money and blah, blah, blah. And that didn't happen because there wasn't a job for me, you know, until, you know, an aunt of mine took me to some little factory that and she was so proud, and I was so proud of her for being proud that she could get me a job. Stop. And that I could, you know, I could have a little job. But the little job was sitting at a sewing machine, sewing purses. So all day long, and it was a pedal sewing machine too. You'd probably never seen one of those. And you sit there all day and go zip, 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 and just go. And I thought, I went through high school to sit and do this. I can't. I cannot. You know, I have to get out of here. And so I got a babysitting job. And then I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to live in this community all my life, grow up, see my friends, or some of my friends get pregnant. The others of them, you know, one or two of them may have gone off to college, but the rest of them just waiting around here in this project until somebody marries them. That's not going to be me. I'm out of here. I'll find a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined the service. Well, that's when the first recognition came that she is going to do it her way. Okay? And as a result of my being the first in my family to find a way to say, okay, I don't have the money, family doesn't have the money for me to go to college right now. I didn't get accepted for a scholarship. So what can I do? I'm going to join the service. And after the service, maybe I'll get the GI Bill and I'll be able to go to college. That's the plan. That's what I'm doing. And that's what I did. But as a result of doing that, two other girls in the project heard that I was going to the service. They joined the service. They joined the Army. I was in the Air Force. They joined the service because they too had dreams beyond the Baxter Terrace. As a result, when my cousins that were younger than I became of age, they found that as a way out too. So they followed in my footsteps as far as that was concerned. So that was the first thing. And everything that I did, I wrote about. I used to write, journal, even at that time. And things, when I came back home, because when I would come back home, it was always, everybody wanted to know everything that I had done, how I had done it, people I had met, experiences, and this and that. And this seemed to motivate them to want to go beyond where they were. And they did it. So I felt, well, okay, you know, I didn't feel well, I'm doing this, but I noticed that this was happening. and I felt good about it. So in school, in the service, I'm sorry, I'll take a step back. In the service, as far as being stepping out and taking responsibility, etc., as a young black woman, as I said, I was the only one in my particular squadron. So it could be, you can say, well, you were just put there because you were the only black one. You can say you were put there because you were the shortest one. You can say whatever you want. But anyway, um, I, at that point, I was listening a lot. So I didn't really step out on my own. But as I said, it could be for any number of reasons. I never tried to figure it out. I was always put in a position of some kind of little responsibility, either by the squad person or my peers or whatever. Someone would say, well, if I had an iron and nobody else had an iron, they wanted to know, well, uh, could they use the iron, or where can they, or something, anything. It could be those small things, like that. I think that in college, as I said about the haircut and that impressed a lot of people. And so a lot of people wanted to know, well, this starts a discussion, right? Why do you do this? Blah, 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 blah. And I lived in an international house where there were students from all over the world. So in that situation, I was called upon to lead, different groups, the entertainment group. I was given a scholarship to be able to, arrange concerts and things, like give concerts and be a part of, lectures and things like that. And, that made me very proud, and especially that I was capable of doing it. I had risen to a point that, as I said, I had a voice, and that voice gave me an opinion, and evidently people didn't mind listening to my opinion, you know. And at school, I was a force to be reckoned with at my school, because I started late. I started college late when people were supposed to, because I had gone to the service first.
Mhm.
When people were graduating from college, I was just starting college.
Mhm.
So I was always making sure that I was in my classes, doing my work, not missing, catching up, in other words. But it was a grind, you know, and evidently uh, that was acknowledged and appreciated, because in my senior year, and then I did an extra year because I had an injury. My tuition was fully paid, and I didn't know who paid it.
Wow.
It was somebody paid it. I later on found out who it was. Many years later, had been a white woman that I had worked for as her. Uh, I was, what was I called? I was a clerk in her office.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and she was always very interested. And because after school, I would go to New York to go to my dance classes, etc. And I would always leave, right on time. She said, "Well, where are you going, Mary?" I said, "Well, I'm going to New York. I have a scholarship new dance group, and I'm taking my classes, and later on I'm going to audition for Juilliard." And she just be, that woman paid my tuition. It was she. I was shocked when, you'd find out years and years later who it was and how it happened, you know. So she believed in me
Mm-hmm.
and helped me to believe in myself without being even present, you know. So, and then being a teacher, I mean, well, first of all, I was a dancer as Miss Dina, but to be invited to be in the Albany American Dance Theater as a dancer, and then later to be invited to be Mr. Ailey's assistant, and then invited to be his associate artistic director for, over 14 years. That certainly has to tell you that you have something to offer and that you're contributing something. And I never pound my chest about it or anything like that, but especially now, as Alexis says, this is a reflective time. uh, you sit down and you count your blessings, and you realize that, okay, where and how am I meant to be shining? Maybe there's a glimmer there somewhere. Maybe I have been shining. I don't know, but that's something that I have to come to, as they say, come to Jesus with. So we'll see. We'll see. But when you're an educator, um, that is the height of being responsible. If you really, and I really love being an educator, um, but you have to take it seriously. And I don't take anybody serious in a serious vein unless I feel that they're serious about themselves, because when you are in a position where you have to, it's not about teaching them anything. I always feel that you have to guide them to discovery, you know, place the possibilities before them, give them the information that you think will send them in the right direction to get the answers that they may be seeking, and be close by to give the support that may be needed. You know what I mean? But it's not about doctrine, because as we know, doctrine does not work. It's just repetition. Okay? And I don't care how many times you repeat something, if you're repeating something that is negative, you're not going to come to the result that you're looking for. Well, during the civil rights movement, I mean, it was a time of transformation. So women, like men, were taking their place in whatever area of life they, they happen to be in at that particular time. You know, I don't see any difference. If you had asked me now, how are women in this particular civil rights movement that we're in right now? Um, as a woman, as a Black woman, I'm not seeing much difference than at that time. You know, at that time, maybe the only difference is right. It was new, so it was worth the risk to step out on faith and try something that you had never tried before. But now, since we're in it, I think women are being very, I think women are being very bold, as they should be, and demanding, as they should be, and really stepping up. I am really, when I look at, you know, MSNBC or some of these other, you know, news shows, and I see so many young Black women as you know, analysts and journalists, and then you find out, no, they're also educators and lawyers and this and that. I mean, wow. I am telling you, I am so proud. I don't know what to do, you know, because as I said, in the 60s, it was discovering that. So people were stepping down on risk. But now, you know, from this exposure, this media exposure of what is happening all around the world and who people are. That's amazing. That's wonderful. Who people are. I see all these young Black women, you know, just stepping out on their own, and so smart and so motivated and so determined, you know, to have their voices heard and to make their mark and, you know, and contribution to what's happening now. It's wonderful. It's wonderful and it's amazing. And to date, I have nothing negative to say about anything that I've seen, you know, and everything, that Me Too movement and all that is a reflection of the 60s, really. You know, you say Me Too, you say, and me, and me. What about me? You know what I mean? But I see Caucasian women had to allow themselves to do that, step out on risk. You know what I mean? Step out on faith, to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think Black women have been doing it all the time, some very quietly, you know. And when I spent time in Africa, and I spent a lot of time in Africa, uh, after I was after I was in high school, I spent a lot of, I mean college, I spent a lot of time there. And I lived in France as so that I could go. I wanted to go to a certain school, and I did, so I went there. But before I came home, I decided I'm going to go to Africa, and I'm going to go to all the places I've read about, and I'm going to go. I don't want to go to museums and this and that and the other thing. I want to go to universities. I want to go to villages. That's what I want to do. So I just saved my little money, and it was cheaper to go from Paris than to go from United States. So having living in Paris, I just decided when I was going to go, and I did. But the discovery was, once I got there, the wonderful writers that I discovered. And my bookshelves are filled with the books that I collected, you know, of African writers and African American writers, but mostly African. Uh, this was also helps to fill you up, you know, to be able to have a voice. It fills you up when you know what has gone before you and you're standing in the place where it happened. And there are young people writing about these things, about their immediate ancestors, etc., and telling the stories of that we would never hear in the United States about the development of their countries, their lives, their cultures, their traditions, etc. This fills you up. This helps you to be who you are, you know, so that you can stand alone or you can stand among others alone and still feel confident, you know. And that too is a civil right,
Mm-hmm.
okay? The organization I honor very, very much. I do. When people are doing good things, insightful things, things to benefit our growth at, and in all ways, yes, I honor them. But you don't always join things that you honor, you know, because however I'm meant to be shining is yet to be discovered, you know. So I don't know. I don't know. I do know that I've always tried to know what I don't want to do. I haven't always known what I do want to do. That's always been a discovery, you know. So I don't know. Life is like that, you know. And I think that by broadening our understanding and idea and acceptance of what civil rights is, then we will always go beyond just the institution, you know, to honor the individuals who have brought this to light and given it this talent. That's that's something that we all need to recognize, because in that way, that body has given us the leadership, has given us the opportunity and the direction from which we can go. You see what I mean? So it is a, a great, and it's like the NAACP, the same thing, an institution where people of like minds have come together and do come together to be able to educate us and to have us hold accountable those who dishonor us, and to make changes so that we can remain erect, because they will beat you down,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So as young people, I think that young people really have, or beginning to have, quite um, a bountiful, uh, enriched um, background to draw upon, you know? You really do. But you have to be willing to seek it. You have to be willing to take the risk, to step out. And, we don't always have to just, there's a time to be quiet, there's a time to listen, a time to learn, and a time to discover, and a time to act for above all, a time to act. But if you don't have the right information, you could be acting out instead of acting towards, you know? So, yeah. So, my dears, you're a lovely looking group. And I hope I've shared something. I know I jumped around a lot, but that's what life is. That's the way my life has been. And although I can't get an official stamp as a civil rights activist, I've been living my civil rights all my life. I think it was more when I was younger, I think it was more um, visible when I was younger. Right now, I'm not really feeling um, the, a great presence of civil rights as an organization, but as a movement of those people out on the street, yeah, I think that they're pursuing their civil rights. But the institution, I'm not feeling that. I don't see it. I mean, I don't see it that much out there. Um, the wonderful John Lewis just passing, I think that he was very proud of late, just before his death, to see Black Lives Matter, become where they were trying to, a few years ago to just dismiss it as, rebels on the street. Now it has gained, you know, much more acceptance, and people are taking it seriously and things like that. If that's the new civil rights, then I think it's definitely in the right direction. And I think the right people, young people uh, of the right mind, who are just beginning maybe to rise, as where the leaders are not there yet. The leaders are not there. They may be there, but what I should say is they're not visible and acknowledged as of yet. But I think they're there. I think they're there, and I think it's a wonderful movement, and everybody is beginning to understand. I mean, to at least acknowledge, well, maybe Black lives do matter. But we have to tell them how it matters and why it matters. You
Mhm.
see what I mean?
Mhm.
And not let them rest on their laurels by saying, okay, we're out here protesting. What comes after the protest? They should be not protesting, but preparing,
Mhm.
preparing. And then, you have to plan to prepare, planning and preparing. And that's what I tell my teachers in school too. You can't just walk up here and think that you're going to walk into class and just tell these kids to, stand in first position. No, you have to have a plan. Where do you go from there? You know, you have to plan, prepare, organize, you know, present, all of those things. I call those my magic P's, all my P's, and I give them to to those teachers. These are the P's. At least consider them. So yeah, the civil rights as a organization and etc. I don't feel very present. Black Lives Matter, I feel very present and very hopeful to, very hopeful about. Um, where civil rights in the past was very present because we were the basically the majority, 99% of the people protesting and going out to institutions, I mean to facilities, stores, and this and that. They were actually doing things. They were acting out, you know, sit-ins, bus-ins, traveling, voters' rights, etc. Those are actions, things to make things happen. I don't see those things happening as of yet. I think they're in the minds and hearts of people, but they are not, as far as I can see, they are not as visible as the things that happened back in the civil rights then. Yeah. I don't know. I can't be so, I don't want to be the person that, that's so prideful to say, well, what is, they don't know what's happening or that's that what's going on and nobody is doing this and nobody, people are doing things, but as I said, they're just not visible or you just can't wear them yet. It's like having a new suit and you're not able to wear it yet because you're not sure how it fits. But I always want people to be open for discovery. I want them to be curious. I want them to want to learn, to want to know. Because if you want to know, then you'll seek learning. You'll seek how to get, what you want to know. So it's always about freedom to be able to express oneself,
Mhm.
you know, but and there's always a but in a responsible, respectful way that you'll be able to share what you have with others and they'll be open to receive it. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So yeah, it's about education, as cliche as that may sound. But in education, there is a certain amount of research that has to be done.
Right.
And out of that research comes a discovery.
Mhm.
And then out of that discovery comes the need to experience it, experimentation, right? And then out of that experimentation again comes discovery. And then you go to decision making. So if we can move along a path that um, has the ability to nurture us and expand us in ways that open us up to be able to just respect, others and, live with others and I don't know. And all those sounds like cliches, but a lot of those cliches are really what the heart is longing for,
Mhm.
you know. and we don't like to say it. You know what people will think. Forget about what people think. If you're sure about what you're thinking and doing, believe me, there's somebody else there who's going to join you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, don't hide, be open, and knowledge is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, knowledge is freedom. And don't be afraid to ask for it. You know, ask questions, you know, think deeply. I'm going to go and I'm going to get you where that quote I keep talking about comes from. It's right on my desk by my bed. Hold on. So it comes from a book, my bedside book. Look at it. um,
Mom,
uh,
we can't see.
the title of the book is I Will Not Die, An Unlived Life. I Will Not Die, An Unlived Life. And it's this page that I have open because this is what I need to think about now. Where am I meant to be shining? And it's from a book called Don't Call It Night by someone named Amos Oz. But if I can just read some of this to you, do you mind? Okay. What are the environments, the ways of working, and who are the people that bring out the best in you? As a result of the fragmentation most of us have experienced, we have become more convinced of our separation than our connection. Thus, we don't really consider that the environment in which we work or live can determine whether or not it is ever possible for us to bring our gifts to the community. Where am I meant to be shining? And then the next quote is the life, and this is my pondering, is the life I'm living the life that wants to live in me? To me, that's profound.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so I've shared that with you.
Thank you, Mama Mary Barnett.
Yes, I do. But I think you have the younger the younger forum to do that, which is the Black Lives Matter. I
Right.
don't think that, I think you have it. I think that's what I'm saying.
Right.
You can't imagine how many older people are waiting in the wings for the Black Lives Matter to just really come into its own, not just as a protest group, but as a movement group. Movement meaning moving things,
Mm-hmm.
moving policy, moving, change, really being very hopeful about that, because even friends of mine who did go out on protests and things like that, um, they said, like my sister, for instance, she said, well, no, this is their time. Let them do the protesting. We did she meaning she and her friends did the protesting before. But I really believe that, and you three be responsible too, to not let these this beginning be hijacked by those who will turn it around for their own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are those out there that say, yay, yay, yay with you. You know what I'm saying? but they will turn it around to their own agenda. And when you look back, like we're looking back now, you'll be crying for the same things again 20, 30 years from now. They'll hijack it because you know what? I'm going to say this, and I'm not a person that's prejudiced or anything, but, and maybe they just showed it on television like this. But last night, I saw on television part of a news program where they showed um, a peaceful protest of Black Lives Matter, and they had a made what is it? They had a speaker, and the speaker was supposed to be a highly, influential person, background, blah 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 blah. And I don't doubt that she had it, but there were three different people that came by that podium, and they were all Caucasian. So I'm saying to myself, well, maybe maybe I tuned in at the wrong time, but this doesn't seem right to me. They're going to hijack this whole movement here and turn it around to some intellectual, pseudo intellectual, whatever. That's a possibility. I shouldn't say they're going to do that, but that's a possibility. That's why the action part of this needs to happen. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It needs to happen. So you all are responsible for raising your voice, ever how so quiet, and no matter how small or large the group, so what's happening? Here's a question. So what we doing? Or what you want me to do? Then we get to it. What do you want me to do? When we doing it? Oh, next year. No. What about right now? You know what I'm saying? Who, what, when, where, how, and why. This is the W's. We have the W's and we have the P's. But it's now for some of those other things. We know who. We know where, everywhere. We know when, now. How? Let's do it. You see? How and why. How, why that particular how? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I think I'm sounding like an activist. I don't know. Because I really get riled up about some of that stuff,